Welcome to Bicycle Maintenance with a fairly average mechanic. Now, you may wonder about this t-shirt that I'm wearing. I don't know if you can see it. I'll lift it up a bit. It says Vitel, à vous le tour. And yes, it's a t-shirt that was thrown at me by one of the publicity caravans before the Tour de France a couple of years ago. I can't quite remember when. So a free t-shirt, quite light and quite thin actually, so quite useful for this hot spell that we're having at the moment. Now you might wonder about this rather odd neckline. Well, the reason for that is for some reason I guess the t-shirt was designed for French people, but I found it was like a guillotine around my neck. It was really tight there, so I got a pair of scissors and I cut it round a little bit rough and ready, but I'm in sort of quarantine. Nobody's seeing me apart from you, of course, on the video. So anyway, who cares about that? So that explains the t-shirt. So what are we doing today? What we're doing today is how to slam a stem. Now this series of videos is for people who might be relatively new to the bike, but it's also for people who might be fairly familiar with the bike but aren't familiar too much with doing their own maintenance on the bike. Maybe they're used to taking it to a bike shop, maybe they're used to getting somebody else to do it for them, but they'd like to save a bit of money and they'd like to be able to do a certain amount of stuff for themselves. Nothing wrong with that, particularly in these times. You're making your own bread, you're making your own ice cream, you're knitting your own yogurt, you're making clothes for your children, you're doing whatever else it is, you're planting stuff. Yes, you're planting stuff in the garden, as we haven't got any people to pick the strawberries out in the fields. You decided to plant your own and pick your own, so you're picking your strawberries for Britain. Anyway, this series of videos is for people who want to be able to do stuff on the bike. So, slamming the stem, what's all that about? Well, I had a bike, it was a Boardman, funnily enough, and a mate of mine in the old Portland Cycling Club a few years ago, a young lad called Sonny. He had a bike which he crashed, so I said to him, would you like to borrow my Boardman? And he said, yes please. So I said, here you are. And then he phoned me up and he said, do you mind if I slam the stem? And I said, no, of course not, go ahead. And then I thought, I don't know what the hell that means. And I was too embarrassed. I didn't want to ask him because I thought I'd look like a bit of an idiot. So then I looked it up and I thought, ooh, that's a useful skill. I ought to be able to do that. So I learnt about it and then I worked out how to do it. Not that difficult. So I'm going to show you how, if you want to slam your stem, precisely how you go about it. So come with me over to the bike. So here we are at the bike and we have here the stem where my pointer is pointing, and this is the head tube here, and these are the handlebars here. This thing here is called a top cap. Now, depending on the bike that you have, this top cap may have a bolt going through the center. This particular bike, which happens to be a Canyon, doesn't have a top bolt going through the center because it has a slightly different design. But the process for slamming the stem is the same whatever type of top cap you have. So in this particular example, the first thing I need to do is remove this top cap. Now, I used this little hook previously, you didn't see that, just to slip it off a little bit, and then I could lift it up with my fingers. So it clips in there or sticks in there like that, so I can take out that top cap. If you have a bolt going through your top cap here, then you will have to undo that bolt first. I'm now going to take an Allen key or a hex key and release the two stem bolts, which are here and here on the other side, and those are the two bolts that hold the stem to the top tube. So I take my trusty hex key, and if you watch my video which is called Essential and Useful Tools for the Fairly Average Mechanic, you will see that the most essential, if there is such a thing as a most essential tool, is a set of hex keys, and these bolts are in fact a 4mm hex key. So I'm just going to undo those, and as you recall, I undo them lefty loosey, righty tighty. So I'm turning them to the left, one on that side and one on the other side here, which again I turn lefty loosey like so. So I'm just loosening these bolts, I don't need to take the bolts out, or I shouldn't need to take the bolts out, but I need to loosen them sufficiently so I can remove the stem unit. So we'll just see, there we are, I've released them sufficiently, I think. Having loosened the bolts, I should now be able to remove the stem and the handlebar assembly. You'll notice I haven't touched the handlebar assembly, I'm only dealing with the stem, and I'm just removing the stem like that and letting it hang down on the wheels. The handlebar and the cables are holding it. That has now revealed the top tube, which is here, and you will see that sitting on this top tube are these black plastic rings. You see those? There are, in this instance, 3, count them, black plastic rings. There you are. Now, I hope I've remembered in which order I've removed them. In fact, there are 2 slightly wider ones and 1 slightly narrower one. Now, it is those spacers that regulate how high up the stem is, and thereby how high up your handlebars are relative to your wheels. All that slamming the stem means is that you remove 1 or 2 of these spacers, and when you put your stem and your handlebar assembly back, your handlebars will then be lower, and when you are sitting on your saddle, you're leaning forward, your hands are on the handlebars, you will be in a lower and therefore more aerodynamic position. So if you happen to have a bike, a road bike, and you want to be in a more aerodynamic, i.e. faster position, you can slam your stem by removing 1 or more of the spacers. By the same token, you may find that you buy a second-hand road bike and you find that the handlebars are too low for you. You should then find that there are spacers above the handlebars which you can remove and put under the stem, so thereby raise it up a bit. So these spacers are what regulates the height of your stem and thereby your handlebars relative to where you sit on the bike. I don't want to slam the stem on this particular bike. The bike is set up for where I want it to be put, so I'm just going to leave the spacers as they are. I put the stem and handlebar assembly back onto the top tube like so. I need to make sure that the handlebars are straight. So I try and look directly down over the stem down to the front wheel to check that they are straight, and I can then tighten up the stem bolts with my hex key like this, and now that I'm tightening them up, I'm doing them righty-tighty. Mighty-tighty, lefty-loosey. Now you'll notice that I do each one in turn. I don't completely tighten one and then do the other. I tighten one a bit, then tighten the other one a bit, then tighten the other one a bit, then tighten the other one a bit. So I want to get the tightness equal and the amount of strain that I'm putting on the top tube equal as well. Now if you watch my video about the use of a torque wrench, you will remember that torquing bolts to the correct torque is particularly important, and on most components it is marked what that torque level should be. You won't be able to see it on the camera, but in fact just here where I'm pointing next to the bolt it says 5 Nm. In other words, these bolts should be tightened to 5 Newton meters. That's that one and this one. So here I've got my trusty torque wrench, and you should just be able to see it there where that red line is. I've set it to 5 Newton meters. So I'm now going to tighten these bolts using the torque wrench up to 5 Newton meters. So let's just put that in there. Got to get the old bolt in the hole. Doing this fairly gently. I'll now switch to the other side. Still doing righty-tighty. You can hear the ratchet working, and there we are, the telltale click that says it's reached the 5 Newton meters level. So I go back to this bolt on this side, tighten it up righty-tighty, and again the telltale click, so it's reached the correct 5 Newton meters. And then on this bike, all I have to do with this top cap is to put it back in there and just put it down, there we are, until it clicks, and that's it, it's sorted. And that shows you how to slam a stem. And there you are, how to slam a stem. Not difficult, as I'm sure you'll agree, as most tasks on the bicycle aren't difficult if you know what you're doing and if you've got the correct tools. And in this instance we needed a 4mm hex key, and we really needed a torque wrench. It's not absolutely essential, but if you're going to mess about, well, if you're going to do maintenance on your bike following the example of a fairly average mechanic, and you've got a nice carbon bike, to do anything other than use a torque wrench is really asking for a bit of trouble. And why indeed risk that kind of trouble? You've spent quite a lot of money on your nice carbon bike. A torque wrench will cost you perhaps 40 quid, probably less actually. You can get cheaper versions, and it will make a tremendous difference to ensuring you do the right thing on your bike and you do your bolts to the correct torque level. So hope you've enjoyed this video. There is a whole load of videos in this sequence about bicycle maintenance with a fairly average mechanic. You'll find them dotted around. Please watch them. If you're enjoying this series, please give me a thumbs up, please subscribe, click the bell, that'll give you a notification when I upload a new video. Hope the coronavirus pandemic isn't causing you too many problems, and look forward to seeing you in the next video. Do take care.